Welcome to Daredevil in the Details, a show that explores and dotes on the philosophy and themes of Netflix's Daredevil, a digression collection brought to you by Method to the Madness and ZeroIndent. I'm author DC McNeil, and I'm joined, as always, by Patrick from A Method to the Madness. Pat, this week we're getting real angry and big and green.
Just like the people at that convention.
True.
Yeah, gonna bitch about woke shows. Oh, girl.
Yeah, we're talking about She-Hulk, is what we're doing this week. We were just talking about how we're going to cover this, so I think what we're going to do is we'll do a bit of a summary so that you'll know what the show is and what's going on. We'll talk about the connection to Daredevil, and then maybe just kind of paint outwards to talk about the show as a whole. Now, I think I watched the first couple when the show came out, but, have sort of, fell off pretty quickly. I shotgunned this entire series in, 4 days. I do not recommend that for one's sanity and or health. It's just a lot. They're short episodes. Damn. That's the only 30 to 40 minutes max.
Yeah. First of all, I'm sorry that you have to go through that. I mean, look, I feel like the show isn't that bad the first time around, but it's just having to rewatch them. Like, I didn't watch all of them. I just watched the Daredevil ones. But even that was, a bit much for me. There's just nothing here.
There's nothing here.
There's nothing here.
I can't get over how nothing this show is.
Yeah, I know.
I was writing my notes. Sometimes I have this instinct when something's bad to be like, okay, let me identify what's working and then, think about how they could have done this better. It's really difficult with this show because the show isn't trying to, do anything. There's no...
Yeah.
There's no anchor to grab onto to be like, oh, this is the vision that they're trying to pursue here.
This is the most content sort of thing that Marvel has ever put out, I think.
I think that's probably true.
Which is, like I said, the first time around, it's the equivalent of watching some YouTube videos or something, if you really have nothing else to do, this is all right. This is something to fill the time.
But it's low effort YouTube videos, though. Do you know what I mean?
But yeah, I just feel. I mean, some of the jokes are funny, but talking about this in our format, it's this is strange. This is an uncanny sort of episode, I feel.
Yeah, this is an evening episode for us again. I think probably the thing I want to foreground before we kind of get stuck into it is our method here doesn't really work because our method would undercut the ability to talk about the show because our method kind of it necessarily informs itself as you watch the show. And as you watch She-Hulk, it just becomes more and more perplexing as you go, where it's every 3 or 4 episodes, it just becomes about something else. And then at the very end, they're oh, we need to resolve this. And they do. It's very odd.
So I see in the summary, you've sort of written the summary for the whole season.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
I wasn't sure how else to because it's well, it's hard to put the Matt Murdock episode into this without talking about how it's placed in its context. But its context is really confusing. So I did my best to keep it as, I guess, digestible as possible, I should say.
Okay.
So, very quickly, it was created by Jessica Gao, and she wrote a bunch of the episodes. And it was directed kind of alternatively by Kat Coiro and Anu Valia, both who were fairly new faces at Marvel. So this is kind of, as you said, it's in that era of content, and they're just sort of churning through creatives in order to push out as much work as possible. So, we'll have some stuff to say, I think, about the direction the show ends up going, but in theory, it's Kevin Feige with his hand on the wheel with Jessica. In theory.
Mm-hmm. With his little robot hand.
With his little robot mitts, yes. All right, let's hear the summary, as it were, if we could, Pat.
All right. I lost it. There it is. Jen Walters is a button-down attorney. On holiday in Mexico to visit her cousin Bruce Banner, a freak accident spills Banner's blood into hers. As a result, Jen is now a Hulk. But unlike Bruce, Jen has the self-awareness and self-control to remain herself when transforming. What follows is Jen's search for identity and belonging. Single and in her mid-30s, we follow Jen as her life evolves into taking cases for powered individuals, and before long, she finds the She-Hulk identity appealing. Among her many cases, Jen goes on dates with man after man, failing to find the right one. After meeting Matt Murdock across the aisle in a case, Jen and Daredevil mix it up before going home together. The next day, Jen receives the Female Lawyer of the Year award, but is interrupted by revenge porn, causing her to Hulk out. Captured by Department of Damage Control, Jen is forced to wear an inhibitor that prevents her from transforming. She loses her job as a result of her rampage. Dejected, Jen tracks down the Hulk King, who injects himself with Jen's blood. After a protracted fight, Jen breaks her inhibitor and the fourth wall. She speaks with Kevin, an AI in charge of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Jen convinces him to rewrite her finale. Returning to her story, Jen finds the bad guys arrested. She celebrates with her family and Matt Murdock. She even gets her job back. It seems that for now, Jen has healed the rift caused by her powers and has found a moment of peace.
Yeah, hard to put the thing into a concise paragraph. Let's talk about the... yeah.
Sorry. The last episode, I just sort of like... Or the after Matt Murdock ended in episode 8, I kind of skipped through. So I just want to ask, is that what happens? There's revenge porn of her?
Yeah, it's her sleeping with the guy Miller that she went on a few dates with.
Oh, and he takes like pictures of her or something?
Yeah, and that gets posted during the convention, and then they take her blood, and then what's his face becomes the Abomination and Hulk's out.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, Pat, that seems forgettable. I feel like that's a detail I should remember. That becomes the problem in that episode. It's very odd. Okay, let's talk about the Matt Murdock of it all. So, when we were planning the show, we kind of said maybe we should cover this because Daredevil's in it.
Yeah.
What is your feeling? Do you want to set up the Matt Murdock episode for us? Like, what happens in that episode?
So, there is a amateur wannabe superhero called the Frog. Leapfrog, actually.
Leapfrog, yeah.
Leapfrog.
Great name.
He is just a spoilt kid with too much money, and he wants to be a superhero, so he's sort of bought this suit from the tailor that makes superhero suits. Apparently he makes Daredevil's suit as well as Jennifer's suit. He misuses it. He wants to sue that tailor, so he hires Jen. And in the trial, the suit maker hires Matt Murdock as his attorney because they have a relationship because he makes Matt's new Daredevil suit. The Jennifer's client loses, the Leapfrog dude, and he then kidnaps Mark Jacobson. I can't remember.
Yeah.
The tailor. Yeah. Daredevil and She-Hulk get into it in a parking lot when Daredevil is pursuing Leapfrog. They find out that what the situation is actually Jacobson has been kidnapped by Leapfrog. They work together to bring him down, and that's pretty much the Daredevil part of the episode.
Yeah. And what... there's an iconic image that will never leave my head, which is Daredevil doing the walk of shame with his boots in his hand across the lawn, which is extremely funny. I've said this before. I wasn't a Marvel kid. I was a DC kid. You know, I just always found Marvel I don't know. It wasn't for me.
Yeah.
So it's funny coming to a project like this with She-Hulk where she's she exists in the same stratosphere as like a Deadpool type character, right? She's aware that she's in a story to some degree. She can talk to camera directly. And then you get this episode right toward like the climax of the show where you get Matt kind of injected as Daredevil. Just sort of like apropos of almost nothing becomes the center of the entire episode. It's a really like weird sequencing choice, but you know, I mean, it's it's Charlie Cox at his best in a lot of ways, right? He's convincing, he's charming. He seems like completely in control in a way that Jen isn't. When they're sort of preparing to go in and take out all the goons, they have this pretty funny exchange where he's trying to explain the difference between a goon and a thug or something like that.
Yeah.
And the actual the kind of action sequences are pretty fun as well. We get a corridor, like a hallway fight.
Mm-hmm.
But like
you get the Daredevil theme played for a bit.
Yeah, you get the theme, which is nice. There's also something about this which makes me go like the part that's interesting to me about Matt Murdock isn't always the Daredevil thing, right? We've talked about this a lot. It's like the lawyer stuff and it's the kind of process and procedure stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's telling this show in particular that the second it becomes about the lawyer stuff, there's just this instinct to be like, no, back to the superhero stuff really, really quickly. And this introduction of Matt is kind of the show trying to unify those two worlds in like a meaningful way. Almost like a kind of structural resolution to the plot that's happening, right? Where it's sort of like the reason that Jen can't find the right man is that she's either finding men who are interested in her because she's She-Hulk or don't want to be interested in her if she is She-Hulk. And Matt is kind of like a unification of that problem where he sort of represents like a potential crossover, Venn diagram of Jan and She-Hulk in the same way that like her life could potentially be unified as well, right? Which is sort of how it ends. Is that your impression as well of like what this episode is trying to do?
Right. Yes, that makes sense to me because the reason why he is the last guest character and he's sort of the climax guest character is because he has he's an exotic character in the frame of the MCU. He's not the Abomination who is in the movies. He's this weird outlier that people are excited to see, and it's kind of it's unconventional. But the other thing, of course, is that there's a massive parallel in that they're both lawyers with superhero other identities.
Right.
And yeah, as you say, I think the fact that we're seeing Matt after the whole 3 seasons of Daredevil, where he is confident and he is resolved that conflict of living 2 lives, is exactly what Jen's conflict is about. And so he provides a template for how she can exist.
Right. But my issue, I guess my issue with it, if I had to have one, is that doesn't have a heck of a lot to do with how the show resolves, right? Like the show starts, here's the difficulty. The Daredevil stuff is extremely cool and sick, and even just like Matt Murdock showing up here and being a much more confident, kind of fully realized version of himself than we've seen previously is extremely cool. Like that part of it, I don't want to kind of like walk past that in any meaningful sense because it does really work as far as the writing of his character.
Yeah, he effortlessly like slides into the MCU, which is like this by far the best thing about this episode. Yeah,
effortless is exactly right. It doesn't. It's hard to explain, but it manages to marry the tone of the kind of MCU writ large and then the Netflix universe in such a. And it's Charlie Cox in the way that he kind of presents the material that he's given, because he's both serious and engaged with the perils of what's happening. But then instead of being quippy, he's actually funny. Like, it's hard to identify the difference, but like in my head, a quip is a joke for the audience, and a joke is something that a character is saying to someone else to make them feel something or think something or laugh or whatever it is, right? And all of the banter they have is for each other. Like, do you know, like there's no
right. Like the line about goons and henchmen, he's like fully serious about that. Like that is like he's very earnest about.
Yeah, well, it informs his strategy of how they go in and deal with it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, and that's like really that's just like a really cool choice, right? To have him be in that space now where he's sort of, he has like a taxonomy of bad guys that informs the way that he goes into situations. Like, that tells you so much about this character and where he was and where he is now, right? Like, this is business as usual.
Goofy. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And here's what's tricky, right? He has on the gold suit from the comics, which apparently is like a thing that happens from time to time. It's a cool look. I'm not entirely convinced that it makes him less menacing in a weird way that I don't know makes sense, but then also the place he's in, I don't know. What do you think of the suit? Is I guess what I'm asking.
Yeah, it is strange, isn't it? Like, it is. The helmet is yellow. I wish they kind of went all yellow. Why do they? The red doesn't complement the yellow mask at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm down for a yellow suit. I thought the helmet looks pretty cool.
It's pretty sick. Give me all gold.
Yeah, exactly. In terms of like why they changed the suit, I mean, new phases, new identity, new clothes, whatever. I get it.
Yeah, it gets to a point where you're like, I mean, we just don't really get enough of it. What's kind of interesting to me at a creative structural level is we're back to the old suit in Echo, which I think is supposed to happen before this. And then by the time that we're going to get to Born Again, it's a new red suit. So this is clearly like a moment in time, or they're going to eschew the She-Hulk stuff from his canon. Or pretend it didn't happen. It's hard to sort of anticipate how they're going to resolve that.
Yeah, it is an interesting question because, I mean, supposedly his relationship with Karen is just definitively not happening.
Yeah.
If we take this as canon. So, yeah, it is. It does have a lot of, like, implications if this was canon.
What I do like is that it brings this element in that I think a lot of people quite like from the comics, which is that, like, Matt Murdock, like, will and does sleep around, and we saw quite a bit of that in season 1 with the way that Foggy kind of thinks of him. But yeah, it's like the Karen of it all is like a really interesting question that goes sort of unremarked upon. You have to wonder to what extent. I mean, this show as a vehicle really struggles from what you said before, which is like, it is content. Like, they are like, we need to get X amount out in X amount of time, and you can kind of feel that at times. What's really weird, though, is for a show that's kind of on a time crunch, on a particular budget, they keep making these decisions that force VFX artists to do a bunch of stuff really quickly that, like, you can either be good or you can be quick, right? Or you can be quick and expensive, and they've obviously gone for, like, quick and cheap in some of these scenarios. And what's weird is the corridor sequence with Daredevil feels very real and like kinetic, and it kind of feels like it's ripped straight out of the show in a lot of ways. But then him fighting Jen, it feels like they've got this like CG model that can whip around and do physically impossible stuff in a way that we just haven't seen in the show, really, outside of the like one sequence in the Defenders.
That's a good point. I suppose. I like it though. But
cool,
you're right. It is more acrobatic than we've seen him, but like,
which I think it's just because coming off the back of season 3, where he's like hardcore boxing, and it's all about like, it's just two strong men screeching at each other and beating each other bloody. It's such a weird sea change to come into this and see him do like a flip off of a car park and then catch a pillar and swing himself back in, kind of thing.
Yeah. I like how they want to have some continuity in there though, because he says, when he's describing his powers, he goes, "Oh, well, I can just hear really good. Well, I used to be able to hear really good." So they've obviously, the writers, they've seen Daredevil season 3, and they know what's interesting. Happening.
What does he say after that? Because doesn't he provide some like? Doesn't he say something else after that? I can't remember what it is. because he says, yeah, like, I used to hear really well, and then he tries to provide an explanation for like how he does it now, or have I misremembered that?
No, he's Jen is like, oh, I'll take her location, and he's trying to say, well, no, it's not that simple. I can, smell things and hear really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does it does put you in a mindset as this kind of all happens where if you had no idea, like if you hadn't watched Daredevil, I gotta wonder how this hits for you, because it is like such a change of pace in the show. And like, even as a Daredevil fan, I wasn't geeking the whole time. I was just like, oh, this is really competent, right? There isn't a kind of a... I don't think it hits hard enough as someone that is invested in the show that he comes from. And I also don't think it is approachable enough that if you don't know what's going on, that it works by itself. Like, I think it almost misses the best of both worlds to some extent.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it works. Yeah, it's hard to say. I reckon it would work maybe a bit better if you didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, because from the perspective of Jen, you see this like very confident, sexy man take a sweep her off her feet kind of thing.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it also makes you go like, maybe Echo made the right choice, which is like, it's really brief. Like, you just get a glimpse and then it's gone. And it's sort of... Unfortunately, I wish these shows were good enough that they didn't need to keep calling Charlie Cox and being like, hey, can you come on set for like a couple days to make people watch our show? Like, I feel that is really unfortunate.
I mean, you know what I love, though, is his cameo in No Way Home. I really, really love that scene.
Yeah. He's just there for a second.
Yeah, and he's providing legal advice. And then he also happens to catch a brick.
What does he say, like, when he catches it? I can't remember.
He says, I'm a really good lawyer.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring up the Spider-Man film, because I feel like what this show sets up initially is Bruce Banner kind of being like, hey, like, being a Hulk ain't that simple, like, you need to figure all this stuff out. And then she's kind of like, basically she's able to control and be present in the Hulk because being a woman is so fucking terrible. Like, because men are so awful that she has all this self-control about her anger and is able to kind of control the situation. And it's almost like Bruce is sort of pitching a similar kind of thing to Spider-Man, where it's like, with great power comes insert lesson, right? But then the way the show resolves has nothing to do with her intelligence or like her lawyering or even her like unifying of the She-Hulking with her life as a lawyer. Like, they just play this like, oh, she breaks the fourth wall and like rewrites her own story, right?
Well, it's this abstract idea of agency that is the theme of her resolution, right? And it's just, I mean, that is just the lowest level of like feminist idea that you could possibly insert into your show. Like, fuck me. Try a little harder.
Yeah, it's exactly the show that I point to when people are like, look, Disney's woke, man. And then I'm like, bro, they are so not progressive, you don't even understand. Like, it's so wild to me. I've just now noticed, I just looked at my other monitor, I've noticed that Crystal has made the background outline the shape of the Mickey Mouse. Yeah, I just noticed that.
Yeah, man. I said that when you joined the call, but then you couldn't hear me.
Oh,
oh my god, it's the mouse.
Yeah, Crystal's a genius. Thank you, Crystal, for tolerating me.
Yeah, this is awesome.
That's kind of sick, actually. I've looked at that for like a year and didn't notice that. That's crazy.
Surely it's just for this one, right? Is it not?
Yeah.
Has it always been there?
That's what it. Okay, but like, I've had that on my hard drive for a year.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah. Some other stuff that I think works kind of well. I want to say some nice stuff, and then I want to completely just grill the shit out of this show. The things I like I think really interesting is getting like specific detail on Bruce Banner's life and like what his life looks like now. Right, he's got this like initially you're like, oh wow, he's got this sweet pad, you know, on the beach by Mexico and this like cool lab underground. And then as Jen kind of stays there and works it through with him, it becomes pretty clear that like this is a dude who reminisces more about the past than has a life and has friends and family, right? Like, you know, he reminisces on Tony and Steve, and it's sort of this like everyday kind of like what happens between the missions, and the answer is like, well, you don't really have a life, do you? If you're Bruce Banner, everyone else gets to have relationships, right? You think about Spider-Man, like he gets to have friends and relationships. The Guardians of the Galaxy, you know, get to have people in their lives that matter, and they get to do things that they care about. And for a character like Bruce, you know, his two best friends, you know, Steve is gone forever. He's vanished into the past, and Tony's dead, right? And it's like this dude just has nothing, and the one thing he has is Jen, which he then immediately corrupts because of who he is. And so the audacity for him to want to be close to her results in him changing her life forever in a way that maybe isn't necessarily positive, and that, as he says, paints a target on her back. And so it's this kind of like, I think in a different show, if taken more seriously, it could be quite a tragic portrayal of Bruce Banner. I think it escapes that by being a bit funny, because they have a bit of a punch up before she leaves, and, you know, they repair the deck together and things like that. But I think it's really interesting material that they don't quite pick up and do anything with.
Right. It feels a bit weird to, I mean, yes, I hear what you're saying. Like, it has a lot of potential to have interesting drama, but like you'd have to completely change the genre of the show. Like, it would have to not be a comedy at all. And like, do you reckon there's like any version of this show that wouldn't have been a comedy? I feel like that'd be a strange pitch for Kevin.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think for Feige that would never happen.
Yeah.
I think that with like a different view of what these things could be, 100%, you could sort of see. I mean, you could have the tragic comedy, right? Like that's like Shakespeare's specialty. Yeah. It's doable. And I think the way that would play out is you have the initial thing be kind of, first of all, you have Bruce involved more, which I think is probably financially limiting, just given the way that the production works on these things. But you would have Bruce be in it more and have him be like a point of contrast that Jen slowly starts to align to, right? So like, if Daredevil's the template of making it work, Bruce is the template of giving up on trying. Like giving up on that unification. And so that's how I think you would sort of run the tragedy angle, is her realizing like, oh, the more I become like Bruce, the less my life makes sense and makes me happy and makes me fulfilled. And the more I start to feel that isolation.
Yeah, it takes a bit of the color out of your life. And then you could still have the same function that Daredevil serves at the end of the series, where he shows her how to resolve those two parts and keep a spirit and a zest in your life, and, you know, be normal.
Yeah, especially given, like, I think that would add like a nice dramatic weight to her kind of like dating all of these fucking losers and like just really struggling to connect with like people that she wants to connect to. Like, I think the show's best instinct at a kind of a schematic level is that like Jen feels like she has one friend that she really gets along with, and the rest of the world is kind of already alien before any of the She-Hulk stuff happens, right? Like, she's found a thing she's good at, which is being a lawyer, and she's found one friend that is adjacent to that profession. And like, absent that, it seems like she's really struggled her entire life, in potentially the same way Bruce has, right? Being very smart, being very competent, and finding that can create barriers to vulnerability and connection with others. I kind of wish that was I mean, like, it's here, as we, like, to your point, like, becomes muddled with agency really quickly as the show goes on. Or even, like, sense of self. Like the fact that she kind of gives over her identity for a period of time to She-Hulk, that really muddies the kind of thematic, waters that are happening here, where, like, we were being generous when we were like, yeah, and then Matt represents the template. I don't know the show gets there by the time you meet Matt Murdock. He just happens to come in and completely, like, steal the show, and every scene he's in with her, it just kind of clicks together nicely. You kind of imagine if they'd started with that as an idea for where the show was going, you could kind of build backwards from that and really have that intentionality, and that would probably inform the results, like the conclusion to the show differently. Which, like, yeah. I mean, we can talk about the conclusion in a second, but I mean, like,
going with the spirit of your rewrite here. Okay, how about this as a pitch?
Yeah.
You have Daredevil be like a main character throughout the entire season.
Mm-hmm.
He's still a love interest, but it's a one-way thing where he is still with Karen, and Jen finds, I don't know, maybe not an obsession, but an infatuation with him because of how he handles his life. And that could be that could be an interesting sort of tragic, like a bit of a rom-com kind of thing. Yeah.
That's pretty powerful, actually.
Yeah,
to have him have his shit wired tight and put together to be in, like, a healthy relationship after everything that's happened, and for her to sort of...
Yeah.
For her to kind of be looking in the window, as it were, and kind of going... That mistake I think a lot of people make when they see people in relationships, if you struggle with relationships, they kind of look in the window and they go, oh, if I could just swap out for that person one for one, I'd be happy and this thing would work. I think that'd be a really strong maneuver, and you could even then have the conclusion be, the trick is not to be in Matt Murdock's life, it's to unify those two worlds, and that could be her making peace with Bruce, potentially. And so maybe you drive a stronger wedge between them about her resentment for him, that he's kind of ruined her life. Maybe that's a through line throughout the show, right? She kind of eschews his coaching and his advice and his friendship, as it were, in order to kind of incorrectly pursue Matt and sort of that obsession, right? And then her realization would be, no, the trick here is, like, to come to terms with what's happened and balance your life and find family. And for her, that family is her best friend, and it's Bruce.
Yes. There you go.
Yeah. There we go. We came up with a good show out of all the bits and pieces that are here. I didn't know that was going to be possible. I was really worried coming into this that I wouldn't have any redeeming ideas.
Can you remind me what happens in the middle of this show? Like, what happens from, like, episode 3 to 7? Like, what happens?
It's a great question. She basically... So she goes back to her life and everything is going fine, except someone says some shit in court at the end of episode 1, and then she hulks out and she's like, oh, maybe I don't have control. And then it's just a series of, like, cases that try and build up the kind of Hulk King as a figure. And in response to this kind of growing threat, she reveals to the world that she is She-Hulk, and then sort of commits to that identity. And when she does that, she's still sort of in this process of dating and trying to find out, is there anyone out there that will accept me for who I am?
Right.
And it's this kind of muddled middle of, like, the legal procedural stuff tries to replicate the personal stuff, where she uses the She-Hulk thing to try and win cases, and kind of does, but at the expense of the rest of her life. So it's sort of like she does one thing, and then she finds she can't really date anyone, because kind of what I said earlier, they can either just see her as She-Hulk, or the fact that she is She-Hulk is, like, a huge problem.
Gotcha.
So the answer is nothing really happens, is the problem. Which I think is pretty obvious at this point. I think the show has a real issue with, like, its middle. It just doesn't really know what it wants to be.
Yeah.
I will say, the one thing it does kind of figure out as it goes on is, like, what makes Jan an interesting character, right? Like, and for all of the shit that I'm about to put on this show and smack talk the show, obviously the actors are never the problem. I think everyone involved here really puts their best foot forward when they can. I quite like the guest appearances of all these little kooky kind of guys that are they're not even like superheroes. They're like amateur aspiring superheroes. That's like a really fun idea to me. Like, I would almost watch and this is my biggest complaint, is I like that my compliment segues into my biggest issue. I think this show would be a really good dramatic law procedural, and the superhero stuff kind of gets in its way because it panics every time it gets serious and slow and introspective. And then it's like quick comedy, She-Hulk stuff, funny stuff. What if people get bored? Like, it has this sort of like it has like a sense of anxiety to the way that it's paced episode to episode, where it's almost like people have talked about this before. I don't know whose mouth I'm taking these words out of, but it's almost like at the time with Marvel, there's this like requirement of every X number of minutes you have to have a Marvel thing happen, like a quip or a superhero-y thing or a reference or a this or a that. And the show really suffers from being confined to that style of content.
You know what's funny and probably unintentionally ironic is that you feel that anxiety in when she goes to the writer's room in the last episode. Like, I feel like that perfect the aura of all those writers perfectly encapsulates that feeling of like, fuck, we gotta like hit all these marks.
Which is like, I listen, I'm a big advocate for stories. It's the meta modern movement, right? Stories being about stories and being about the story that they're in. A bit of a foreground for some Matrix stuff that will be out well before we record it. I'm a big defender of the Matrix Resurrections for that reason. Like, it's a Matrix. It's a story about the Matrix, and like it does some really interesting maneuvers with that. I think where this suffers is that anxiety, like, doesn't serve the show. It's not channeled into like really creative, strong decisions. It just kind of is there the whole time. And it feels like they're always panicking, trying to get to the next scene to move the story forward. And I don't know that I don't know that like there's a version of the show within the apparatus it's made in that's good, is honestly my opinion here. Like, you think about the contemporary stuff around when this came out, right? It's like Captain America and the Winter Soldier, it's the Hawkeye show, and all of those...
Winter Soldier?
Is that all right?
Oh, yeah, that show, yes.
Yeah, with Bucky and...
Yeah.
what's his name? Yeah, but it's with Anthony Mackie and the guy that was supposed to be Luke Skywalker before they did that weird CGI thing. But it seems to me that like its contemporaries rely entirely on being known characters and having really good actors, right? In the Hawkeye show, you have Jeremy Renner, who Hollywood just cannot decide what to do with. There's like 3 franchises that they tried to pass on to him as the lead and failed. There was Mission Impossible, there was the Bourne franchise, and then there was the Avengers franchise, and they've all failed. Because he just doesn't, for some reason, Hollywood's like, this ain't a leading man. And so I think
he's kind of not though. He's like
he's just saying it.
His character in Arrival is very emblematic of his filmography. I feel like he's just a very like competent like explanation character.
Yeah, he shows up on set and does the job well every time.
Yeah, exactly.
There's
no disrespect. I love him though.
No. Yeah, I think he's really fun, and I really like seeing him in random stuff as well. I like when he just takes a weird gig and he's like, "I'm gonna just turn up and be me." To be like, "I'm gonna be in a Villeneuve film," on the off chance that I win a fucking Oscar. Like, I get it. It's possible. Let me work with one of the best living directors. Maybe I'll win. Everyone else? All the other actors? The director...
Is that right? Did everyone but him win at something?
They all got nominated, basically, except him, which is very funny.
Okay.
It makes sense given that film, honestly. he really does provide that role that you just described. I will say, though, the reason that Hawkeye works is that Haley Steinfeld is just a absolutely charismatic presence on camera. And their their dynamic. Again, it's the actors, and it's the fact that he is this kind of. I really like the way they write him. Right, he's just this like put upon. He's like the everyman of the Avengers. Right, for him, this is like clocking in and clocking out at McDonald's. You know, he's fucking fed up, and then he gets stuck with this kid who just will not quit getting involved, and it's really fun for that reason. But the show is not strong because it's placed in the context of the MCU. The show is strong because of those reasons, right? And the MCU is used well to buttress those strengths. Whereas I feel like in She-Hulk, it kind of sucks the oxygen out of the room, because it's not enough of either thing. It's not enough of its own show in the way that like your kind of Netflix TV shows are when it comes to Marvel. And it's not enough of the MCU thing in the way that Hawkeye is. Like it lands in this no man's land for me of being at once too Marvel and not Marvel enough until you get to that ending. And then they're like, oh, like they literally, like you said, they get her in a room and the writers are like, oh yeah, we couldn't figure it out. It's like, that's the best you could do? We couldn't figure it out? Like, then maybe, I don't know. It's just frustrating because it's like the writer's room, and it feels like a weird shot at the writers too. The writer's room is the place where you would figure it out, and Marvel and Disney are the company that were at the time trying to eliminate writers' rooms to save money before the SAG-AFTRA strike and the WAG strike. And it's like, it's so disingenuous to put them on screen and make them the anxious problem when it's not their fault they didn't get enough time to work on it. That part of it really rubbed me the wrong way in like a profound philosophical way. And you know, their anxiety is founded, but it's not their fault they didn't get the time to do the work.
Yeah. You know what? Do you remember that bit in one of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies where Sam Raimi's brother is like, you know, working at the Daily Bugle or something, and he's got like these buzzwords and he's smacking them on the whiteboard?
Yep.
I feel like that's exactly what happened in the exec room at Marvel, where the words slapped on the board were stuff like irreverent, meta, like, you know, like we need a show like that. We need like our Deadpool. It's not gonna, we're not gonna take this seriously, essentially. And so make sure the writers don't take it seriously. Right. And to ensure that, we're gonna like, you know, rush this and make every episode 30 minutes and like just like give them the least amount of tools to be able to make it anything other than these buzzwords. Like, yeah.
It's so weird that that's the same company that greenlit Andor. I know I keep coming back to that, but I can't get over the whiplash of like and obviously the Star Wars vehicle writ large has all these problems we're talking about, right? Like, I don't want to like underplay the fact that the production apparatus continues to fail the stories it's trying to tell. But like, from the same company, you get She-Hulk and Secret Invasion and fucking Andor. What are you guys doing? Like, whoever is making decisions about, hey, we're going to greenlight a Star Wars show for people that don't like Star Wars, and then people that'll like quick rush out a poorly thought out kind of show about She-Hulk that's Deadpool, but it's TV, but it's also bad feminism. Like, it just, none of it is congruous to me as a company. And I think that's like part of the issue with there being 4 companies in the world, right? Is like, if you don't have a vision that you're willing to prosecute as a creative firm, you're just making shit for the sake of making it. And even the stuff that works well isn't because you did your job right. It's because you have practitioners that have sustained themselves and survived the poor decision making that you've engaged with within the umbrella of your organization in order to do things that matter, right? Like, it's the most bizarre like misapprehension of how to run a creative enterprise. And I think Disney is hitting the kind of limits of what that's capable of, right? Critically, at least, and box office wise, they've run out of juice on this model they have.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there is a case for an adjacent, similar, massive enterprise company that is doing it well, which is Apple, right? like Apple TV, like they know what they're about. Like they're pumping out these
It's all bangers.
prestige. Yeah, like they have they have an artistic gusto about them that is uncompromised, I feel. And you know, they're the biggest company in the world. Like, you know,
I feel that the difference is they go, someone pitches them a show and they go, here's a wheelbarrow of money. Just let us know what it's done. They're not trying to do this big interconnected, everything has a hook into something else. They're just like, I mean, could you imagine Disney would never give Ben Stiller the money to do Severance? That would never happen.
Oh, I forgot Ben Stiller was the producer of that, hey?
He's a genius. He did Walter Mitty. He's a brilliant writer. He's a brilliant director. He's a brilliant producer. He's absolutely one of the most talented directors working at the moment. And you have to think to yourself, okay, Apple can do this because this is an argument with Amazon as well. Amazon will put out bangers as well. Not reliably bangers, but they have a lot of bangers in their catalog. You know, Invincible is fantastic. They're absolutely knocking it out of the park with that. It's absolutely brilliant adaptation. They're also not really deviating, which I think has benefited them quite a lot, because it helps if the source material is as good as Invincible is. Versus like The Boys, where they've had to make a pretty rubbish comic pretty good. I think the sort of difference with the Apple vehicle is that, similar to Amazon, their revenue stream isn't reliant on that artistic side of the business. It's like a thing they get to do on the side it's someone's pet project to make that happen, right? If Apple TV as a subscription service isn't making money, it doesn't matter because they're still making more money than God. Whereas like
it's making them cultural money, like,
yes,
you know,
it's what you said, which is when someone says, well, Apple only make hits. They're only making prestige TV. It's cultural cachet that is invaluable, right? In contrast to someone like Warner Brothers, Discovery, who are like, they've put the most normal man on the planet, David Zaslav, in charge. And they've said, go and like gut our company to reduce cost because we don't know how to make money anymore, right? And that's what's resulted in things like Rooster Teeth being shut down. Instead of the kind of prosecution of a vision, Warner Brothers Discovery have found themselves in a position where nothing they have works because they stopped prioritizing everything we just talked about. And suddenly, unlike Disney or Star Wars, where they sell $1 billion worth of toys, so they always have a bit of a war chest somewhere, like Warner Bros. Discovery are kind of up shit creek without a paddle. They have one thing that's working, and that's the Batman. And then suddenly they have to be like, we need to hire best talent in industry, but in order to afford to do that, we have to gut everything else. And so they bring Zaslav in, and he's a guy who, most normal guy on the planet, nothing wrong with that man. They bring in a guy who doesn't really understand how the world works, is so rich and capitalist pilled that he just like, you think about the Batwoman film, that was finished. They were like in post-production, they were finishing the VFX, and the decision was, well, we'll save more money if we kill it because of the tax cuts. That is not a firm that is prioritizing creative work. That's a firm that is like, we need to make money as quickly as possible, right? They're too big to succeed in some sense. And so I think She-Hulk is like a reflection of that at an industry level, where Disney probably don't need these shows to make money, right? They probably don't need Disney Plus to be profitable for them to make money. But the problem with the streaming model, as it's kind of played itself out, is that it's not profitable, right? There was this big push early on because of Netflix's kind of prescience in the market. There was this big push for like, well, we all need to do our own streaming service. And what no one realized at the time, because it hadn't proved itself out, is that Netflix does not make money, right? They aren't a profitable business. And the cable model was working well, right? Say what you will, cable TV outside of Australia, because we have a weird problem here about like, we have one cable network. In other countries, the cable model works really well and like gives you sustainable long-term revenue that just, you print money forever and you can make cool shows, right? Think about the way that that Westworld comes out of the Fox merger, and you get Jonathan Nolan in the door to produce and direct 1 to 2 seasons of TV that are revered as some of the best TV there ever is. You think about the ways in which like that is no longer happening in those places. It's now Amazon or it's Apple, right? You don't get that kind of traction if you're not already making all of the money you need to elsewhere. And so it kind of, I feel like it kind of puts the producers and the writers of the show in this position where their mandate is to make a thing as quickly as possible on the lowest budget possible and upset the least amount of people possible, because they're kind of going for volume and quantity over quality, or at least that was kind of the pitch at the time with the kind of Disney apparatus, which they keep saying they're going to wind back in, but I haven't really seen any sort of evidence of that outside of them canceling a bunch of projects.
What, the Fox merger with Disney? Is that what happened?
No. So it was Fox and so there's Fox in Australia and then there's Fox in the US, and they're different. Yeah. And so it was Fox in Australia merging with some entertainment component of the US part. Like it was like two parts of the business that had been dissonant came together, and that's why they were able to get distribution in Australia for Westworld.
And what that kicked up a buzz. Everyone's eyes were on Fox, and then they had a bunch of popularity and money, and they just funded Westworld. Did they?
Yeah, they basically took that and they funded Westworld.
Okay.
I want to say it was a sub brand of AMC, maybe in the US. I'm probably getting that wrong. I'm sure Americans are yelling at me.
So is HBO a Fox brand?
No, well, in Australia, they're distributed by Fox because everything is owned by Telstra in this country. I don't think that's the case in the US. Because that used to be HBO Max, and now it's just called Max, which I think was like Discover. What did they I can't remember what they merged with, but it was HBO plus something else.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is all who owns what is quite interesting to me.
Yeah. It becomes this kind of like this thing of like who bought who this week. You know, that it gets to that point. But yeah, I think to your point earlier, I don't know that this. I don't know that the way that this resolves with the writer's room and you see that on screen, I don't think that happens in a creative firm that is interested in like what Apple and what periodically Amazon are interested in producing. I just don't see. I just like Apple keep funding weird shit that is like, who is this for? Like, there's that TV show with Joseph Gordon-Levitt where he plays a teacher who has like he's like toxically optimistic, and it's just this like weird David Finch-esque introspective look at this guy who just is like in complete denial about reality, and it's so good.
I gotta watch more Apple TV stuff.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I think I've got like a free 3-month trial because of my TV or something. Like I updated my OS, and like here's a free 3-month trial, and I'm like, I'm gonna get into that for sure.
That did pop up for me as well, but then I couldn't chase it. I was like, where'd it go?
Where'd it go?
Okay, so yeah, bit like the dust is settled, the energy is plateaued, and there's nothing being shaken up anymore. And so you're saying Disney is sort of content with just inflating this service they have that already has garnered, you know, a consistent viewer base, and there's years of content already behind it and context as well, and they just need to get stuff out and support it.
Yeah, they need to. Yeah. One of Netflix's biggest challenges early on was like, we need content to keep people paying for this thing. So after they transitioned from DVDs to a streaming service, it was like, we need a reason that you don't cancel it each month. So
and Disney charges by the year, don't they?
Do they? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can only buy a year's worth of Disney Plus subscription, which is quite sneaky.
That's sneaky, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. That's so predatory. Because then it becomes hard to, like, it's not like a monthly expense where it's easy to track where that money's going. It's like a lump sum every year that you forget is coming.
Yeah.
That's dodgy. Yeah.
Yeah. It really is.
I feel like one of the kind of, this is now just like us talking about why this show is the way it is. There's a thing that keeps happening, which is everyone keeps realizing none of this is sustainable, right? both at like an executive level and as consumers. A bunch of people are like, hey, they're making bad stuff now that is uninteresting, and like people are going to keep leaving these services. I think the biggest kind of indication of the market for these streaming services really failing is this like password crackdown stuff, where someone has done the numbers and they're like, we would prefer to lose a portion of our audience than in exchange for a certain chunk of cash, right? It's almost like a deprioritization of as many people seeing our good stuff as possible in order to prioritize profit, which kind of suggests where their motivation lies, right? Which is like, they're not interested in getting good art into the world. It's like the content is in support of the profit margin, not the other way around.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really be too surprised at that. Hey, like, you know, it is, at the end of the day, like, all art is business.
You can't be surprised by it, but you can be incensed by it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can be like,
Yeah,
it should be different.
Yeah.
And I think
You're
there's
right,
always this like spurious thing of like, it's so hard for a lot of people to imagine an alternative way of doing things, because like capitalism is so, especially integrated world capitalism, which is kind of what we're living in now. It's so it's like literally everything. Like it's on your phone in about 27 different ways. It's like your fucking like smoke alarm system is now like Bluetoothed and wired into the building that you live in. Like just all of this like nonsense shit that some of it's good and some of it's bad. And so it becomes difficult to sort of imagine a version of reality that's different unless you're already in a position where you're free to be different. Like we kind of said with like Apple or like with Amazon, like you kind of, it seems almost insurmountable to build something from nothing now unless you're already one of these giant companies that has a giant war chest that you don't mind spending to give people free reign to make cool shit. You know?
You know what? I have a sense that you know, the art that is coming out for and this, it's different for different companies, but it's all a rhythm, and right now they are in a trough. I think they're not necessarily will be forced to adapt, but I think they will feel the need to, maybe in a decade's time.
Right.
And I reckon we'll start seeing some more interesting stuff. But yeah, I think for the time being, it's not looking too good. And this is like this, and I think people will look back at a show like this and it'll be like, yeah, this is really emblematic of that time and place.
Right. It feels very much of the kind of post-COVID, like quick, we need to get content made.
Yeah.
And I think it's
pre writer's strike kind of stuff. Yeah.
Which is kind of cool that like the writer's strike has created this trough. Like that's obviously the design of the WAG SAG-AFTRA strikes, is like it has created this problem for Hollywood, which is good. I think you're right. I think it'll snap back at some point. I just kind of hope that like whoever they are putting on Born Again, they're giving them the least to do what they need to do. And it could be the rare exception for Disney. Like I think that does happen from time to time where like Disney just greenlights something and get the fuck out of the way. You know, I mean, that you listen to the way that the executive producers over at Bad Wolf talk about the upcoming Doctor Who stuff and the outrageous demands Russell T Davies made, where he was like, I want it to be distributed. I need you to find me a global distribution partner that will give us a proper budget and won't interfere creatively. And they managed to swing Disney for the exact reason that like Davies has that clout. Well, I mean, we've talked about this before with like Tony Gilroy and Vince Gilligan and some of these alums in the industry who get whatever they want because of, you know, they have the CV for it, right? They have the receipts to show, if you just give me creative freedom, I'm going to deliver to you something no one else can. And you have to hope that your Netflixes, your Disneys start to chase the Apple model, start to become hungry for like, what if it was good? What if it was good art actually? You know?
Man, I'm so nervous about about Born Again. I really, obviously I want it to be good. We both want it to be good, but
I want it to be good so bad.
I really just have no clue like what kind of tone, atmosphere, rhythm, what the subject matter is going to be like.
Do you know? Do you know anything about? Like, have you been across any of the sort of on-set photos and videos and stuff like that, or are you completely in the dark?
No, I'm pretty in the dark. I mean, I know. Okay, I know. I saw the what's his name, Bullseye's blue suit, whatever. I know that they scrapped the whole show to write a longer, more legal drama focused show. That's about it.
Okay, I won't say anything more because I don't want to like color your, as you get to it, what you think of it. But I have a bit of faith, having seen some of the behind the scenes stuff. Of what I've seen, it looks like they're back filming in Toronto. It looks miserable and cold in the streets. And it looks like they're doing classic Netflix Daredevil stuff.
Yeah.
There are some familiar faces that I've seen on set that make me go, oh, that's a really intriguing choice. And I think if it plays out the way that I hope it will, I think we might be pleasantly surprised. I have next to no faith that it'll come off, but it's a possibility.
I see.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts on She-Hulk? Anything else you want to kind of touch on?
I don't know. Not really.
Yeah.
Not really. The Daredevil. They did him well in this show, and that was that's as Daredevil fans, I think that gets a passing grade.
Yeah. It's validating to be like they get this character.
Yeah.
It gives me that like small smidge of confidence that they can do him right again.
Yeah.
Do you think this is just a random question. Is Charlie Cox doing something we don't know about? Because I feel like the older he gets, the hotter he gets. I don't know what that is, but that man, like, he was attractive when he was younger, but he just gets hotter with age. I don't know what the fuck is up with that. Do you know what I mean?
Well, he's got. I feel like this is gonna be out of pocket. He's got daddy energy. Like
For
he's
real.
got like
Yeah.
Like if he had like a little girl with him, like as in like a daughter. Like I feel like that that daughter he would be everything to a daughter. Like
For real. There you go. That's an unexplored plot point, folks. That's for free.
And that's exactly what the 20-something ladies love.
Well, doesn't I mean, Echo in the comics kind of becomes his like kind of surrogate. And she ends up replacing him from memory. She becomes the new Daredevil, but she's sort of like a.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I think so. Well, because in the comics currently, Daredevil's a female. It's Echo, I think.
Sorry, say that again.
So in the current Marvel continuity, I'm pretty sure that Daredevil is like a female, like it's Echo. Like I think Matt's retired.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's a really interesting arc. I kind of skimmed it. I don't read a lot of comics these days. Most of what I consume is purely for coverage, just with the amount of stuff that I end up being on. But I kind of dipped in when that was happening. They may have reverted it. I don't know. You know what comics are like. They can just kind of like
I do
whoop, and then it's back. But there is I have a hope for where they end up going with this, and I hope what they do is they grab all the best parts of this kind of story and they funnel it into like an interesting one-shot season, right? Like I want to see Fisk back in some capacity. What does him being defeated look like? I want to see Dex absent his humanity completely. I think that's a really fun angle to kind of drill into. And there are other characters I'd love to see again as well that I think I'm hoping the show is brave enough to be like, yeah, let's like just really see what we can cook if we put some good ingredients in here.
Yeah, that's exactly. I want I want to see the boldness of the Netflix show with the budget of MCU budgets.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. I want to see them spend money on ideas that are risky and interesting and think about Disney and how much of their market is a combination of China and America and how much of a important that is to them. And think about Netflix's Daredevil and how much it challenges Catholicism and faith, right? And America, just the two things it leads the world in is military spending per capita and the number of adults that think that God is real. And then China as well, which in kind of a post-Mao modern setting is like quite religious in a kind of adjacent. It's not quite Catholicism, but certainly in a particular offshoot of Christianity. And you have to imagine that it would have to take a bold direction for Disney to be like, yeah, and we're back to the faith stuff. So I wonder if that survives or if that's a shoot entirely and it sort of takes a different direction. I'm curious.
Yeah, I have a feeling they don't want to piss off China.
Yeah.
If they can get John Cena to apologize to China, then they can do anything.
Yeah, they can. And that's that's the high watermark for companies. If you can get John Cena to apologize to China, you can do anything. Wow. What are we doing next, recording Pat? It's our climax. It's our ultimate conclusion.
Wow, were we gonna release this one before that one?
Yeah, this will come out before that. This will get
in which
stuck in.
case,
Yeah.
Yeah, season 4, my perspective, season 4.
Yes, I'm so excited.
Ooh.
Yeah,
me too.
I'm
a
so
lot of
keen.
pressure, but I'm excited.
yeah, we're gonna do it in person, I think, which should be fun.
Yes.
I think the last in-person one we did was season 2, episode 1.
Yeah, that's right. When my shit wasn't working, so I had to impromptu come to yours.
Yes, I have to get that all set up, but I have all the stuff I need. I have in a box in my cupboard all of the setup from the old studio, and I finally found the microphone stands. So we're actually going to have a proper setup, which would be nice. Because there's nothing more annoying than holding a microphone when you're trying to read something from a page. So I've sorted that out for us. Get excited.
And you know me, I'd be bumping that all over the place. You'd have to be.
I remember the edit for the one that we did with Mitchie. That was a nightmare. It was me and Mitchie doing this, and then you just kind of moving your microphone at random distances as you spoke. It was good stuff.
I was quite drunk during that.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a good episode. There's a really good clip that we managed to pull out of me telling Mitchie the Teenage Mutant Ninja Stories and Daredevil origin crossover.
I watched that.
Yeah,
short. Yeah,
just the look on Mitchie's face of I think he thought we were fucking with him genuinely.
I think he thought too. Yeah,
it's extremely fun. Yeah, Pat, where can people find you on the internet if they want to find more of you and what you do and hear more of you talking about films, philosophy, and all things creativity?
People can find me on YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Stitcher. I also have a website, amttm.com. Do a podcast with my buddy Mitchie. We talk mostly about Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, but we also cover movies. Our latest one was Gladiator. So if you want to listen to
episode.
The themes of Gladiator before Gladiator 2 comes out, you should check that out.
Yeah, Pat was well read on that one. You had the books behind you for real. That was a really fun episode.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's good stuff. You guys know the drill with Zero Indent. You can find everything to do at zeroindent.com. You can buy our merch at underink.press, where you can find fun shirts related to our shows. You can find the books that we publish, all that good stuff. Honestly, the best way you can help support us is to go buy something you like or tell a friend you think might enjoy the show. We realize what we do is fairly niche. These long studies of genre fiction aren't for everybody. I guarantee that if you like the stuff we do, you will like what's going on in A Method to the Madness. And by the time this comes out, our Matrix coverage will no doubt be out. So we can go hear us talk about the 4 Matrix films, where I am the one who has, in fact, read the books this time. So look forward to that. Thank you so much for watching or listening. I cannot believe, Pat, next episode is our finale for our Daredevil coverage.
I know.
It's whizzed by.
It's finally here.
We started as young, bushy-tailed, and now we're here at the end.
Then it's like all the characters in Better Call Saul. It's beating us down.
Yeah, I have a beard now. Like I have like a bushranger beard now. Like that's happened.
Yeah, like I don't remember a time when you didn't have a beard.
Isn't that fucked up?
Yeah.
That's like
that is quite fucked up.
Your brain's like auto-corrected reality.
No.
Yeah. Upsetting. Well, we're gonna leave you guys there to just think about that. We will catch you next time for our finale of Daredevil in the details. I'm beyond excited. Thanks so much for watching or listening. Pat, leave them with some words of wisdom. What do you want to send the people away with into the world? What do you got?